in Palestine. Okay, let's now come back to the conversation we're having here in studio and focus on what's currently going on with the IEBC. And we heard that a couple of minutes ago at Lillian Towers, IEBC is meeting presidential candidates. They were raising a couple of issues that they want addressed. In studio, I have Martin Andati and Martin Olo as well. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with us. Just before we went over to Trump, we're talking about some of the key issues that are being raised by some of the aspirants. And Andati, you're talking about some of the issues that these aspirants now need to raise.
You know, he just finished that, but maybe just to add on the issues really that they need to add. The election period is starting on the 28th. A number of things are critical for IEBC to ensure happen. Number one, they should be able to demand of IEBC that it plays by the rules and it does not allow any candidate to engage in electoral offenses, i.e., no open bribery of voters should happen during this period, and only IEBC can enforce that together with the security apparatus. They should ask that IEBC assures them that they will do that and that they will not just complain about it. I've seen situations where a candidate or a person has been found bribing or giving money to potential voters, and IEBC turns up and says, nobody has reported it to us. You do not have to wait for anybody to report it to you. Go out there, police, be vigilant, ensure that there's no bribery happening. Electoral offenses can be avoided, and that's what IEBC needs to do, so that, again, any candidate who then, engages in violence, disrupts other candidates' meetings, should be made to account for it. Again, only IEBC can do that. There are situations where candidates' materials and posters are being mutilated by opponents. Again, this is the thing that you expect that IEBC enforce. So it's now that time when IEBC is a critical referee once the match starts, and that is from the 28th up to the 8th. And so anything that happens in there, IEBC should not be helpless and waiting for security apparatus to come in, but rather it should be able to demonstrate that it has the teeth, it has the understanding, and it has the wherewithal to act around those issues. So really, there's much that, and by the way, remember that all these candidates are paying IEBC for services. So what are these services that IEBC should be doing, should be rendering? They should render security, they should ensure fair play, they should ensure that there's no bribery, no electoral offenses. So really, they're paid for a service, they are
So they have a right to demand for the services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I need us to talk about independent candidates. Both NASA and Jubilee have are on record talking about the issue of independent candidates. Let's listen in a little bit to what was said a couple of days ago by NASA co-principals.
Katika kiwango cha kule juu, tumeweka ambition yetu chini na tumesema tuungane na tuunge Raila mkono. Sasa mimi nauliza jameni, wale walishindwa hapa kwa mchujo, mbona hamuigi mfano wa sisi? Ili hii mambo ikwishe mara moja. Kwa sababu hatutaki Raila awe akiangalia nyuma. Wakati anafanya kampeni ya kitaifa, hatakikani kuangalia nyuma ati nini inafanyika. Si haya. Wewe namna gani bwana? Wewe mtu ambao umeshindwa hapa kwa mchujo, unaenda nini independent?
Kuna vyama 5, si 6, si 7, si 8. Na Raila ndiye akuwe rais, lazima apate 50+1. Na akishapata 50+1, usisahau anahitaji 25% in 23 counties. Pigia kura ile, ukipigia kura ile chama iko outside NASA, hiyo kura si ya nani? Si ya Raila. Chunga sana.
So some of the individuals that IEBC, some of the aspirants that IEBC is meeting this morning are actually independent candidates. There was a couple, I remember Leader Majority Eden Dwali is actually on record talking about independent candidates, saying they're going nowhere, that people should not vote for independent candidates, and the only way that someone can win is if they're within the coalition. What are your thoughts on that? Why are people so worried about independent candidates?
The numbers.
What do you mean the numbers?
You have 4,950 independents. And if each one of them gets 1,000 votes, it's 5 million votes. So anybody who does not engage the independents will have a challenge. And you see, the Jubilee side has changed tact. The DP is on record as saying that they will work with the independents because you need 50% plus 1 vote. So if you get 50% and the 1 vote is not there, you will not be declared president. And what Musalia Mudavadi was saying there is that the people should not vote for the independents in some of those backyards. But why do we have so many independents? Because the nominations were chaotic and shambolic in all the major parties. So the people who feel that they didn't get a fair deal, they have opted to run as independents. So what do you do to them? You lock them out. If they go and say that, like in Busia, you see, Otuoma is very formidable. And the Busia equation is almost becoming tribal because Ojamong is Teso, Otuoma is Luya. Now, if you go, the Luyas are the majority there, and most of them are supporting Otuoma. So if you go and tell them that you have no business with Otuoma, it will be very difficult.
It will be very difficult.
Yeah, so, and you see, the nominations in Kisumu had issues. Nyong'o declares himself in one place with the deputy returning officer. Then the other side, there is Ranguma, the other side. So what do you do to Ranguma? And he has a substantial support. Look at Siaya. You have Nicholas Gumbo, who claims he won the nomination. Then you have Rasanga declaring himself. So all those people, you need their support. So the most strategic thing to do is try to focus more on the presidential vote and get most of these people to support you. Because there is no way you will have Rasanga, you will have Gumbo in Kisumu, in Siaya, support campaigning for Uhuru. It is obvious that he will talk about Raila.
Is it then suicidal for some of these major parties to say they will not work with the independents?
I think that what we need to say, Linda, is this. If NASA does not want the presidential ticket, let them tell us as much. You cannot be running a presidential candidacy and you are busy undermining yourself.
Yes.
The reason why the independents have arrived in town is because you ran poor primaries.
Yeah.
And therefore, you do not go to give them a lecture. You would rather embrace them and say, look, fine, sorry, we may have pushed you to where you did not want to be.
We did not mean to.
Yeah, but remember, if you can campaign and win locally here, that's fine, but please campaign for a presidential candidate. Now, that's what you'd think that a serious political machine that wants to win will do. Now, these lectures won't help. I mean, you saw Elizabeth Ongoro shaking her head there because she's one of those people who are so aggrieved about how the ODM primaries went. So when you go there and you tell her that don't run in any other way and you know for sure that she has grievance, what are you telling her?
This is in other words, this is going to cost NASA.
It will cost
It will. And you know, Raila said the uniform is orange. Now, Ongoro's uniform is not orange. She knows, everybody knows what happened in the primaries.
In the primaries,
so, and you know, Musalia is there supporting what Raila is saying. Yet, his uniform is not orange. Because Musalia's uniform is not orange. So, is Musalia telling his people that what Raila is saying? Because Raila will do the same thing in Western. When he goes to Kakamega and says that he has endorsed Oparanya, what happens to Khalwale? What happens to Michael Sundwa, who is running on NC? He goes to Bungoma, he does the same thing, he endorses Kangati, and yet you are supposed to be in the same coalition. You are campaigning for him, and he is telling you, vote 6-piece. Of course, there's no 6-piece suit. We know there is a 3-piece, you know.
In the meantime, Johnson Mrama, who says he's not running and is not in Wiper, is busy campaigning for you at a national level. Why should somebody who is not in a political party
It's actually interesting that you bring in Mudhama. I need to talk about Mudhama, and I'm hoping we can run that in a minute or two. Go.
Yeah, and then when Mudhama goes back, he says he's going to support Musila, who is running as an independent.
And he's campaigning for Raila.
I mean, come on.
So he's supporting an independent, but he's campaigning for Raila, so it's just all over.
So these guys ought to decide what they want to do, but they should not take Kenyans for a ride, because we can read through them.
What are your thoughts about...
And Linda, you know, the last election was lost on voter turnout. Okay. There were more numbers in the code strongholds than there were in Jubilee. But the Jubilee side managed to get their people to turn out more.
They rallied their people.
Yeah, they
to
rallied
vote.
their people more to turn out and vote. When you look at some of the NASA places, the turnout was as low as 60. How do you get the people to turn out? Bring in competition, internal competition. So the independents help you to be able to get as many people as possible to turn out and vote. Okay. And you see, as long as they are talking about Raila, to me, that makes helps you get as many of those numbers as possible to come up and vote. So it helps you. In fact, that will be the easier route for NASA to take so that their turnout can go to as high as 90-95%. And that way, it helps them win the presidency. But you see, they want to win the presidency. And at the same time, they still want to force through some of the unpopular candidates who rigged the nomination. Because if your candidate is popular enough that he won a primary, why does he need support from a presidential candidate?
Okay.
If you won the popular vote, then you should be on your own. In fact, what you need to do is to be helping the president to rally the numbers. You don't need to be clinging on the presidential ticket and hanging around Raila, struggling to get your seat. Then that's a wrong candidate, and that tells you the process was flawed because you wouldn't have 4,950 going as an independent. Last parliament, we had only 2 independents. Now you have all these people, and all indicators are that we might end up with more than 100 MPs as independents. We will also end up with so many governors as independents. But you know, with time, they will have to be aligned. So the ones who are aligned with NASA will naturally align with NASA. But of course, it gives them some room of independence.
They also have options.
Of course, they also have options once you have been elected. And you know, one thing NASA is not looking at. If they play those games, then the election goes into a runoff. And you antagonize these guys in the election, and they have been elected.
Aspect,
They have been elected, and you antagonize them. You refused that you call them Biraka, and now you have won the presidency. The election is going into a runoff, and you need their numbers. They will naturally go against you. So
they'll cheat the numbers.
You know? And every vote in this arrangement counts.
NASA prides itself for being the Democratic Party, the Social Democrats, and so on, and the Human Rights
Coalition.
How do you want to undermine a person who is exercising their constitutional right to offer themselves as independent? What is your problem with them? You should allow them to run, because at the end of the day, it is not you who is going to make their decisions.
It's the voters.
It's the voters. So let them subject themselves to the voters. So what is your problem? Why are you insisting that you should have 6 Ps? What is it? I mean, and by the way, I have told them before that, you see, these people will come in, even if you insist that Raila needs soldiers when he gets into parliament, they'll come in and they'll go and start working with the government of the day across. You saw that in 2007. PNU had only so many MPs, and ODM had the majority. But in reality, what was happening in parliament was very different. Those people were lying elsewhere. So,
So, listen, we need to have a conversation about what's happening in Wiper as well, but I need to take a break now. And then we come back, we'll look at that relationship between Mudhama, Kalonzo,